It's time for your local Farm News Week in Review. This week in Farm News, Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack this week announced preliminary farm-to-school census data for the school year 2013-2014 that indicates that strong farm-to-school programs can increase the number of students purchasing school breakfast and lunch, improve consumption of healthier foods at school, and reduce plate waste. Census data also indicates that schools purchased nearly $600 million worth of food locally in school year 2013-2014, which is a 55% increase over school year 2011-2012 when the first farm-to-school census was conducted, creating new marketing opportunities for farmers and ranchers in their communities. The results are an outcome of efforts by the USDA under Secretary Vilsack's leadership to target resources to help schools serve healthier meals to students following the passage of the bipartisan Healthy, Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010. Through its Farm to School grant program, established and funded through the Act, the USDA offers grants to help schools and other eligible entities establish or expand farm-to-school programs. In September, the USDA released a report that shows the grants alone have helped 12,300 schools improve nutritious meal options made with local ingredients for 6.9 million students, while expanding market opportunities for family farmers and ranchers in their communities. The Farm to School Census is a nationally representative survey of school districts. Nationwide, more than 42,000 schools have farm to school programs, which operate in conjunction with the National School Lunch Program and other school meal programs. Many of the nation's top agriculture, food, and biofuel companies have pledged to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as the White House tries to build a case for an international climate agreement. Looking ahead to the Paris climate talks that start on November 30th, the White House announced commitments on Monday from 81 companies, including General Mills, Hershey, Kellogg's, Mars, McDonald's, Monsanto, ethanol giants Mbengoa and Poet, and a major California almond producer, Campos Brothers Farms. Several other companies on the list, which include Cargill, PepsiCo, and Walmart, were among 13 firms whose pledges were made public in July. A number of companies also included in their commitments promises to reduce water usage, which would aid in adapting to climate change. Over the course of the Obama administration, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has created new economic opportunities in the growing market for local and regional foods for new and established farmers, ranchers, and small food business entrepreneurs. Through the investments at the farm level in the form of production research, credit, and conservation assistance, infrastructure investments that connect farmers and consumers, and strategies to increase access to healthy foods in rural and urban communities, the USDA has helped the market for local food grow to an estimated $11.7 billion in 2014. Between fiscal year 2009 and fiscal year 2014, the USDA has invested more than $800 million in more than 29,000 local and regional food businesses and infrastructure projects. The Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative coordinates this work across the department, ensuring that the USDA's programs and policies are evolving to meet the needs of this growing sector of agriculture. The KYF2 website is a one-stop shop for resources and information about USDA programs and support for local and regional food systems. In addition to featuring information about relevant grants, loans, research, and other tools, the KYF2 website features the Compass, which maps over 4,500 federally funded local food projects on the Compass map from USDA and 11 other federal agencies between fiscal year 2009 and fiscal year 2014. All the data on the map is downloadable, searchable, and updated annually, and you can find all this information at usda.gov. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack on Thursday announced the award of nearly $2.3 billion in loans to 77 utilities and cooperatives in 31 states to build and improve rural electric infrastructure. The funding includes more than $108 million for smart grid technology, $41 million for renewable energy improvements, and $9 million for storm damage repairs. These loans will help build or improve 12,000 miles of transmission and distribution lines. The funding is being provided through the USDA's Rural Development's electric program, which makes loans and loan guarantees to nonprofit and cooperative associations, public bodies, and other utilities, primarily for electric distribution in rural areas. Funding for each award was announced this week and is contingent upon the recipient meeting the terms of the loan agreement. Since 2009, the USDA has funded $34 billion in electric loans and more than $1 billion for smart grid technologies. This assistance has helped build more than 185,000 miles of transmission and distribution lines, serving approximately 8.5 million rural customers. The United States International Trade Commission this week affirmed that Mexico's sugar industry has harmed American producers by selling subsidized sugar onto the U.S. market at below market prices, a practice also known as dumping. The 6-0 ruling means that an agreement signed by the United States and Mexican governments to establish a trading structure that caps Mexican imports and stops Mexico's abuses will remain in effect for at least 5 years. This according to the American Sugar Alliance in a release this week. The ITC and the U.S. Department of Commerce launched an anti-dumping and countervailing duty investigations into Mexico's sugar industry shortly after the cases were brought. The DOC inquiry concluded on September 16th and found that Mexico's sugar industry has benefited from subsidy rates up to 44% and had shipped sugar to the United States at dumping margins of more than 42%. The ITC finished its investigation this week, ruling that these actions maternally injured U.S. interests. U.S. sugar refineries and big users of the sweetener had said a ruling such as the ITC released would limit supplies and keep sugar prices artificially high. Cotton, dairy, and sugar stakeholders went before the House Agriculture Committee on Wednesday, arguing that they are being harmed by domestic policies in overseas trading rivals and are calling for the U.S. to challenge those policies at the World Trade Organization. The full committee hearing comes after negotiators from the Pacific Rim countries announced an agreement in principle on the Trans-Pacific Partnership earlier this month. Witnesses said that the agreement and other free trade agreements like it stresses market access, largely ignoring issues with domestic support. Faced with more and more unmanned aerial vehicle, otherwise known as UAVs or drones, violating U.S. airspace and interfering with fire and rescue operations, Transportation Secretary Anthony Fox and FAA Administrator Michael Herrera have announced plans to move ahead with registering all drones. Every day, the FAA receives reports of potentially unsafe UAV operations. Pilot sightings of UAVs have doubled between 2014 and 2015. The reports range from incidents at major sporting events and flights near manned aircraft to interference with wildfire operations. A new task force, which was appointed to address this situation, will be composed of 25 to 30 members with representatives from the UAV and manned aviation industries, federal government, and other stakeholders. The group will advise the department on which aircraft should be exempt from registration due to a low safety risk, including toys and certain other small UAVs. The task force will also explore options for streamlined systems that would make registration less burdensome for commercial UAV operators. The task force may make additional safety recommendations as it deems appropriate. Secretary Fox directed the group to deliver its report by November 20th. While the task force does its work, the FAA will continue its aggressive education and outreach efforts, including the Know Before You Fly campaign and No Drone Zone initiatives with the nation's busiest airports. The agency will also continue to take strong enforcement action against egregious violators. At the same time, it will continue to work with stakeholders to improve safety to ensure further integration and innovation in this promising segment of aviation. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack this week announced that Lannon Backum will be the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Deputy Undersecretary for Farm and Foreign Agricultural Services, overseeing the Farm Service Agency and Risk Management Agencies, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Military Veterans Agriculture Liaison. Backum, who is a U.S. Army and Iowa National Guard veteran, takes the positions following the departure of Karis T. Gutter. Backham, a native of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, is a military veteran and spent 8 years in the U.S. Army and Iowa National Guard and was deployed to Afghanistan in 2004 through 2005. During his time in the Army, Backham held leadership roles as a unit movement officer and served as a combat engineer in charge of explosive demolitions. Backham previously served as the Director of Scheduling in Advance in the Office of the Secretary at the USDA. Prior to his role as director, Backham served as a special assistant in the Foreign Agricultural Service and as executive assistant to the Secretary. Prior to joining the USDA, Backham worked in the Iowa state government and for several state and national political campaigns. Backham is a graduate of Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. He lives in Washington, D.C. with his family. And that concludes this week's local Farm News Week in Review. This is Farm Director Scott Colomb saying, thanks for listening.